Okay, let's move on now and take a look at the latest business news this hour. The World Bank says the pandemic will mean that almost 24 million people will remain in poverty this year. In its latest economic forecast, the international organisation has slashed its growth predictions for East Asia and for the Pacific region. Well, for more, I'm joined now by our business editor, Stephen Carroll. Stephen, first of all, talk us through what the World Bank has been saying.
It's a particularly bleak forecast from the World Bank covering the East Asia and Pacific region, developing economies, which is what the World Bank focuses on. And they're really saying that it is now unavoidable for these countries to avoid significant economic pain linked to the outbreak of coronavirus. It has slashed its forecast for growth for the region. It was expected to grow, or rather, if you based on last year's figures, it had growth in this region of nearly 6%. That's now going to be around 2% in 2020. And China, the world's second biggest economy, will see its growth slashed from over 6% in 2019 to just over 2% this year. And that's based on a scenario that the economy will see some sort of recovery before the end of the year. If it was to be prolonged, the World Bank says in a worst case scenario, the region would see a recession, its entire economy shrinking, and those effects really playing in much longer if the health crisis isn't managed before then. Now, in particular, the World Bank says this will affect people who are living in poverty. It had previously forecast that 35 million people in the region would be lifted out of poverty in 2020. That now, the bank says, is going to be a much smaller number, just 11 million lifted out of poverty, meaning there are 24 million people still going to be living in poverty as a result of the coronavirus outbreak. Under the worst case scenario, it says, in fact, there could be more people living below the poverty line, an increase of 11 million, according to this forecast from the World Bank. Really a bleak picture for the economy linked to the consequences of the pandemic.
And in other business news, Stephen, Amazon has fired a worker who led a walkout at a New York warehouse over the lack of safety precautions that were taken there. What more can you tell us?
This is a man called Chris Smalls, and he was one of the organisers of a walkout at Amazon's Staten Island warehouse. It's a warehouse where around 4,500 people work, and around 100 people took part in this walkout on Monday, and they were protesting over the sanitary conditions at the facility, saying that they didn't feel that they were being adequately protected. But Amazon has now fired Chris Smalls, saying that he wasn't respecting the company's social distancing and quarantine rules. This is a row that's now been raised as high as the New York State Attorney General, Letitia James, who's called for an investigation into the sacking of Chris Smalls, saying that the acts of the company were disgraceful in terminating his employment as a result of his involvement in this industrial action. This coming at a time when there are workers across this sector, both on the delivery and the warehouse side, who are under increasing pressure because of the increased demand for these services, but also many of them complaining that their conditions of work are not safe as this pandemic spreads, at a time when more and more people are seeking to use delivery services because of the confinement restrictions that are in place in so many parts of the world.
Okay, Stephen Carroll, our business editor, thank you very much.